So in this final presentation, I would like to take the point of view of brain activity decoding, so a slight change in perspective. This is joint work with Romuald Menuet, Jérôme Decaisse, Ana Luisa Grillo-Pino, and Gaël Barocco. So in the wild brain activity decoding, it means that you give me any image from a protocol that I've never used before, never seen before, and I try to decode what the subject was doing when you acquired the image. Of course, I may not be able to describe precisely the task, but can I actually grasp, the main things that were probed in this experiment? In more neuroscientific terms, the question is, what are the brain regions important to decode some information about cognitive activities? This is important. This is actually, I think, very important, because with classical brain mapping, we end up in this awkward situation where sometimes very different systems studied by different groups end up in the same picture, in the same type of brain activity, and we don't even know whether we're measuring the same thing. So I give an example here with the default mode network that you see in a coordinate-based meta-analysis associated with many different concepts. And it's important to know, for instance, if a theory of mind can be isolated and identified as such, or whether it should be considered as similar to like self-referential cognitive activities. So to do this large-scale system-level decoding, I have used one main resource, which is NeuroVault, a very large, the largest collection of brain maps set up by Chris Philo. We have about now 70. In January, we had 71K images in NeuroVault, but we had to remove some of them because they were either not human images or not scaled correctly. Some of them had a partial field of view or crazy values, so not like statistical images. So with this filtering, we ended up with about 50K images. Then the second resource we need for this kind of large-scale decoding are atlases. So two types of atlases: cognitive atlases that tells you what are the relevant terms that we could associate with images. So here we use the Cognitive Atlas by Russ Poldrack. So it's a knowledge base that has two main types of data. So concepts, which describe cognitive activity or states, which is what we used in our description, like working memory is such a concept, and tasks that are used to probe the concepts, like n-back task would be used to probe working memory, for instance. And the second resource is brain atlases. Here, to answer Tal's question, I'm really using brain atlases to reduce the dimension of the data. I don't believe that there is some truth in these atlases. Just I wanted to have high enough resolution atlases to be able to well disambiguate brain activity, so about 1,000 regions. But even with 70K images, I believe that this reduction is very useful. So the pipeline that we used to do this analysis was to first try to identify concepts with images, because images on NeuroVault are uploaded on a free basis, and sometimes with notation, sometimes not. So we try to guess what was the concept probe with each image. So typically taking the some title of the image and trying to see if it's left hand versus right hand. So you can guess that this is a motor activity involving the left hand. But sometimes it's less clear than that. So with this concept extraction, we ended up in an original set of concepts, and we then enriched it to get a more comprehensive set, so the target concept. Also taking now the images of NeuroVault, we selected the maps that were usable for our purpose. We did some pre-processing on them, like imputing missing data, etc., to get the fMRI data set. and then we compressed it using the atlas to about 1,000 values. So now each image is a kind of vector of 1,000 values. And we try then to do decoding, that is, we try to predict the target concept based on these region level activities. So doing this, we could, so we had about 100 concepts that were represented enough in the dataset, but we want to do cross-validation across studies. And so we don't have still that many studies that can be used to probe the model. So we used it here a well annotated data set as a test set. So we could only probe 37 concepts, and well, we do well actually. If we try to, for these 37 terms, in general, we have an AUC, an accuracy of prediction of about 0.8, which is much better than chance. We still fail for a few terms. And we do clearly better than coordinate-based meta-analysis because we use image-based meta-analysis, which keep much more information from the data. Also, interestingly, here I give the frequency of the term in the neural corpus, and you see that well, the most frequent terms are not the easiest to decode. It's maybe that, well, some of them are used quite systematically, like response execution or response selection, and still they're not used very consistently, and then they are hard to decode. So we tried to improve upon that. So the first thing was we noticed that the labeling of images was a bit inconsistent. For instance, sometimes people will tag the image with sentence processing, and sometimes they will tag it with syntax. But actually, if you've got some syntax processing, you certainly also have some syntax involved in the experiment, and actually all of them include language. So essentially, we took this very basic hierarchy of terms. Actually, Cognitive Atlas contains an embryo of such a hierarchy. And then we, once an image had a given label, we assign the parent labels in order to have a more consistent labeling. And so, doing so, we avoid opposing terms which are actually associated. And we avoid also some false negatives, so missing labels in the images. So essentially, we double, I think, the number of labels per image just doing that. And doing so, now we can decode more concepts. So now we can probe 51 concepts, and the accuracy improves. We still are maybe a chance for 3 or 4 concepts, but now we do essentially better than chance everywhere, and so for a wider set of concepts. So to understand a bit more what's ongoing, we can also open the box and look at the decoder weights. So there are some very uncontroversial things like motor activities, which are actually decoded close to 100%. There's no debate about these concepts. Interesting point, we can compare the decoding map with the classical encoding maps, where we would just do a standard linear regression to get the effect. And if you take the term like syntax, you see a clear difference. With syntax encoding, you've got some activity all along the STS. If you focus on decoding, then you keep one main spot in the STS and Broca's area. And interestingly also, this kind of analysis reveals experimental biases. Like if you compare face perception decoding to face recognition decoding, you see that they are very similar. The main difference being that in face recognition, you have activity in the left motor cortex on the top, so just people have to press a button with their right hand when they do face recognition, and this seems to be the only relevant difference with respect to face perception. Also, if you look at emotion perception decoding, you end up with essentially the same map as face perception. which mean that emotions are typically proved by showing fearful faces to people. And of course, this would not generalize to a protocol where emotion would be induced by something different. So we need essentially more data in NeuroVault. I'm not worried about the quality of the images in NeuroVault. I think they are good overall and they are at least usable. I'm more worried about the quality of the labeling, and I think as a community we should really take this effort to label the images as well as we can using the concept of cognitive atlas, ideally. So there remain biases as I showed you, but really please upload your data whenever you can. I know it takes time, it's an effort, but I think we need as a community to make sure that what we learn from doing brain imaging. What I'm going to show you now are two efforts to improve upon the current status. One first idea is to leverage semantic similarities. So sometimes some concepts are not well represented in our databases, but we have some related concepts which are well represented. So I gave an example based on here an encoding scheme. If you take the term melody, for instance, it's quite rare, so you would not be able to encode it correctly based on coordinate-based meta-analysis. But you know that melody might be is related to music, musical, auditory, and pitch, and these terms are well represented in our data. And with this, we can combine the corresponding image to kind of guess what would be a reasonable correlate for melody. And same thing for meaning or agnosia. We can do this kind of leverage semantic structure to guess the good representation for some terms. And here is an example on concepts related to numbers and computation, where we can do a reasonable job with this semantic imputation, while classical coordinate-based meta-analysis does not really succeed in encoding these terms. So this is available in an interface, and actually it's presenting this afternoon in a talk in the modeling and analysis session. And second thing, so we need more data. I told you that I kept as a test set a well annotated data set. I have to say it's the one that I annotated, so I'm not saying that I would do it better than you, just I took the effort to try and find the most relevant terms in Cognitive Atlas to describe a bunch of functional tasks. So this has been done here for the individual brain charting dataset. It's a high-resolution dataset. It's like a deep phenotyping dataset in which we map 13 subjects under many different conditions. So we currently have 16 independent contrasts uploaded in NeuroVault, but we're generating 100 more contrasts. So you can see an example of this study where we do a dictionary learning, which is kind of fuzzy parcellation, and you see how actually similar in some regions, but overall different certain subjects can be when you scan them with a lot of different tasks. So I would like to emphasize that to do this kind of analysis, we need good open source tools, and in particular, Nylon has a nice feature to contain an uploader for NeuroVault data. So it's a very useful tool if we want to do this kind of large-scale decoding, so at scale. So with this, I would like to thank all my coworkers and thank you for your attention.